see, there's so much to do. We could go there's so much. So here, I'm gonna just do a quick, so it's the visual as well, plumb lines for you. I do a plumb line of where the sort of like weight distribution and sort of leg. Let's see, I'm gonna do knee, sort of presenting forward, more knee in the back than forward. That if I were to draw a line and someone were standing, this is the sort of weight distribution and where if I were to draw a straight line down, the distribution of the forms as they come down. So as you can see, when someone is standing and their center of weight, their center of gravity, there's a lot more in the back than there is in the front. In that way, that this is the front anterior posterior back. So that if you imagine someone was standing, that's their center of gravity. When they're trying to put their weight all on their legs, where does that mean? What does that mean? If you're to draw a center line. And so what that's saying is that really there's a lot more mass in the back pretty much to hold us up. And you can almost see it here too. Actually, it's a good example is that you really, and he's kind of slanted a little bit, but they kind of leaned him forward. But it's that same, here, let me just show. There is a lot more in the back. I mean, we've got a little bit of the quadricep and they've kind of pushed him forward to like lean. But generally, if you were just standing square, our weight and where the most of the muscle mass is actually in the back of the calf and in the back of the thigh, and not so much in the front, because a lot of that scooping back, it's this bowing shape, right? That's where like you see like Paralympians, they have that blade, that leg. Why is that blade that shape that then goes to this little thing? That's mirroring our leg. That blade is our leg. Like that's why they're making it that shape. It's a spring. It's supposed to take impact and push off, right? And that's where they even have like the little, like there's like this little like rolly thing that they put on the base of it, and then it goes like that, and then it's connected to their leg, right? And that is a Paralympian's leg when they're running, you know, that shape is our generalized form. They basically just boil it down to its line of action and turn it into steel or whatever they use, and aluminum or whatever, and creates a leg. And so that's the idea. And then that's where it can create that compression. And actually, I mean, obviously this design's even more stronger than a human. So there's that debate of like, are they even a better athlete? Because that spring is so springy and they can launch and just boom and really take huge leaps and really like go. I mean, it helps you to understand, just like, it's not just, why is it this shape? It's that it's designed for a reason, to be for survival, right? For human beings to be able to chase prey, to be able to defend ourselves, build structures, build, you know, things like that. And even then eventually agriculture, go off into humanity and our evolution of humans. But it's something to think about. We have to think about why are we this way? And it's as an evolution of that. So let's see, I'm trying to think, I'm like, what other notes have I not covered? Just quick little toes. We can talk about toes real quick. We can do a little foots. So we all tend to sort of, big toe kind of pops out a little bit and goes up. And then other toes kind of tend to curl down and kind of get a little wedge. So if you see like that, there's definitely this sort of curling situation that happens. And then the big toe is more flat and straight, stays more flat to the ground in a sense. And that these ones, they kind of tend to curl or bunch up and curl down towards the ground and just sort of, they all kind of also towards the middle toe. And that's something we'll talk about in hands as well. It's just that within that, even though it's our thumbs, that our fingers all flow towards the middle. And so even, you know, whether you're a sloth or, you know, a mouse, it's that, or cats, there's always this two, you know, or like center thing. And then all the other ones, all the other like appendages sort of branch to that, and it's like leaves. I mean, you can see like it's like part of nature in a sense that there's this sort of central form, and then the other forms kind of taper and follow and flow next to it. And so the same even with toes, even our little toes and all the other toes kind of flow towards the middle toe a little bit. Those are just these like slight little, just paying attention to the anatomy and awareness of like why, you know, as our basic human templates. I think that's pretty much it. I mean, we could kind of, I could bore you with more, you know, anatomy names, and I could really go into like, you know, here we go, like the different like femur muscles and all of these sort of things and tucking, all this stuff. It could be, we can go really, oh yeah, here you go. This is the kneecap moves with the tibia. That's helpful. So I've got a lot of that stuff, but I'd love to open it up and ask anyone have any questions. Please feel free to raise your hand or just unmute. Yeah, you know what, the knee is tough. I think what happens is sometimes people tend to make the knee more of a circle in a sense. And I think we need to think of almost the knee as more of a square. And that way of the way the arrangement of the bones in that sense, that if you imagined it, this knee, it's almost like a box. If I were to draw a box shape. And so that helps a little bit of sort of when we add flesh to it. I'm trying to see, I'm like, do I have a sculpture that's not inappropriate that I could show? Possibly move properly. Let's see, placed hands. So the knee, let's see with this, show it quickly with the sculpt. You see how the knee is almost more square. There's a bit of tapering below that can happen as it attaches to the calf, but there's definitely, it's more square. And then you also want to think about, there's almost like the bone, and then there's this tissue along the side, our muscles and sort of the tendons along the side. And so that really is almost expressed here. I'm gonna draw a quick example of that. Let's see, do quadriceps, other quadriceps, and then the knee itself. And sometimes it's almost like a little bit, you'll kind of like get these like little like squiggle lines as the like skin is compressing, and sort of there's those like little like knee wrinkles. Some people, like, as people get older, there's a whole thing of like, yeah, trying to eliminate those and clean that. It's ridiculous. But just aware of that, that basically the tissue is it's kind of landing and collecting up on the knee. It does get a little bit of a wrinkling, but this bone, and then it kind of tapers to the shin bone. And so that's where you almost, it's like a square that then kind of flows. There's like this sort of wedge shape. If this were the right leg, this is then the femur would have flowed down to that shin, this shape right here. And so if you think about the knee more as a square, that then these quadriceps, these other softer sort of teardrop shapes are sitting on top of it, right? And then there's sort of these little side bits, but that's basically more of like a square that you can kind of like find the edge as it hits right here. Hopefully that helped answer your question. I know it's a tough one without actually having a human being where I could point out specifically. It's tough. I'm trying to work on figuring out a way to get a model that could be co-host with me, so that way I can direct them and have you guys draw from the model, clothed of course, but that way we can have you guys be able to learn a little bit better with specific instruction. And me, instead of just sort of this cadaver experience, I want you to be human beings standing there holding a pose and then really studying that. And I want you to sort of see that. And so that will be hopefully the next sort of class phase, is that I'll have a real person and not just pretend Steve here. That way, you know, we can just kind of, it just helps a little bit. I think sometimes if you can literally see it on a human being and they can move, and a lot of times the biomechanics, right, of having someone literally move their muscles and bones in a way that you're like, oh, that's why that is. Oh, that's how that moves. You know, like I was saying with the knee, like you can't move your knee side to side. You can do your hips, but you know, it will never, unless you break, tear a tendon, it should never move side to side. Your knee is only going to move up and down, like I was showing before. It's only going to move like this. If it ever does this, we got problems. Or inverted, right? If it goes the other way and it goes backwards, that's a problem too. Like it's designed to only bend this way. And it's a more of the, almost like the simplest joint in the body, where before we were talking about the shoulder is almost like the most complex. The knee is the most simplest, but it almost has the simplest job. It literally is just designed to take impact and allow that impact. You know what I mean? It's really, you don't want to overcomplicate that type of thing, because it really needs just one job, which is like make sure we don't fall down. So I don't know, legs and feet can be tough. It's definitely a tough challenge. I think feet too, as I want to show just a quick example as I'm thinking about it, the feet, you want to think about the top of the foot when it meets the ankle as it comes down, and then the big toe kind of, as I'm trying to foreshorten, draw it from you, sort of this flow out, and then the toes. I'm kind of doing a quick anatomy foreshortened example. Within all the tendons that run up from these toes that go woo, you can see how much is really being connected. Actually, the top of the foot, here's our ankle, here's this big toe, here's a little toe. And I know it's like, what is that? That makes no sense. But then we start throwing in the ankle, right? And then it's like the leg, and putting that in there, but aware of there's sort of this cavity in between the big toe and the second toe. But these tendons that run from the toe, and basically from each toe, and run all the way up to the top of the ankle, that really then are connected to the front of the shin, and that run up these forms. And that's where you can see when someone doesn't have, you know, you can see this, even look in my hand, you know, that shape when you wiggle your toes, the stuff that's going underneath looks like piano strings. It literally is piano strings. Like there's literally these strings that are pulling, that are then, you know, moving our appendages. And there's not a lot of muscle on the top of the foot. The top of the foot really is just bone and tendon. It's really the bottom of the foot that has a lot of the muscle underneath and a lot of the fat pads to connect it. And that, you know, that's why if you get, you know, an injury in the top of your foot, there's not a lot of protection. It hurts. There's definitely a pain. But also know the apex. So when I was saying the top of the foot, this apex is more of the inner top part of the ankle, and then it kind of cascades down. And that's basically paying its awareness of, show you. Do you see how it's high up here, the ankle, how high it is? And then it drops down, and how that relates to the front of the foot as I turn, how it changes that peak, right? That's that wedge. And it's really what it's doing. It's helping to hold the feet. It helps to basically lift our toes, right? And it's that flexion of walking, and that interconnectedness. So that's why they're all connected. But that form, this top part of the form, people tend to flatten it out, and it becomes too, you know, too duck-like. It's too flat. Like you can't, it's ankle, and it's not just like feet, you know, there's more. And even then I'm intending to do it. There's definitely this arcing that then goes down to the feet. It's a higher point, the bones, if you think about it too, because they're a spring. It's a spring that's connecting and holding on, again, as much just as impact, heel, ball of foot. And so that shape, right, is really, that's why we have the arch of our foot. It really is a spring impacting the ground, goes boing, and it pushes off, and it naturally wants to roll and push. And so those shapes, that creates that sort of wedge at the top of the foot that helps it to lift and to roll off. And it's that connection, as they all are sort of connected to the front of the foot, which is, for me, I was in a car accident when I was 16, and I damaged the parts of here there. So that's actually a part that gives me a lot of problems. I feel the pain like in my calf and in my Achilles tendon and whatnot in my foot, and I have to sort of massage out a lot of the stuff because it gets really upset. You know, I have to be very conscientious of my feet because it's amazing how much your feet affects the rest of your body, because it literally is connected to all of these other aspects. And if one part of your body is out of whack, in a sense, or not, you know, behaving in a way due to injury or just overuse or misappropriate use, it will then eventually wear your body down, and then, you know, you start to get the pains and soreness. And that's what you can kind of understand too. It's like the biomechanics. Once you start to understand the why, it helps you, right? You then start to go, oh, that's why that shape is that shape. This is just a brain. Like, oh, okay. Like this is the shock absorbers. You know what I mean? And it's just a big shock absorber, a little bit smaller, a little bit smaller. Each one sort of gradient, brings its scale down for each sort of like function. So, and I mean, the amazing thing is that the human body is so adaptable that even if, say, we were to lose our limbs, our body will adapt and we would be able to find other ways to move. And it's just, yeah, it's incredible what the human brain is capable of and sort of communicating with the body. But with that, I mean, if you guys have any more questions, I know there's a lot. It's always a challenge to try to boil down many scientific or anatomical elements in a very generalized forms in a very short amount of time. But hopefully it sort of makes sense to you guys. I'd love to be, I really would like to get a real model so that I can actually show for real, not just have this, that way we can really discuss and I can really like break it down for you. Because I think that the only way you're going to really learn is to see it and to just do it. I think that's the key. The more that I can teach you guys to see, that's my goal. That's all, however you decide to take this information and use it, that's up to you. Whether you want to make it out of peanut butter on bread or, you know what I mean, coffee on watercolor paper, it doesn't matter. I don't care how it comes out. I just want you to understand what you're seeing. That's the most important thing. So with that, you guys have any more questions, please feel free to ask. Let's see, if not, I guess next week we're going to be working on arms and all things arms and hands, and I'll show a quick little demo of all of that and what that means, of all things hands and arms and kapow, punch. I'm sort of breaking down the simple forms again of all of the yeah, arms, come on, hands, what are you doing? But being able to learn how to render hands, because that is the next thing that is, I swear, when I talk about drawing people, the first thing someone says is, oh, I can't draw noses, I can't draw people's faces. And then the next one, or usually the toughest one, because usually most people don't even bother trying to draw faces, then they're like, I can't draw hands, like I'll just tuck them behind if I'm even brave enough to draw a face. Forget hands. Like hands aren't even on the table. Like that's not even happening. They're literally I'm gonna draw them under the table or like under my legs, or like, no, they're just like reaching into like my pocket to get my wallet. Like everything. People will find any excuse to avoid hands. We're gonna face that fear, because when people say I can't draw hands, my response is, oh, you don't draw rectangles? Because that's all it is. So as long as we can kind of break down our fear of hands and sort of see that we're, are you afraid of rectangles? If we can face our fear of geometric forms and simple simple forms, I think that, then we can be okay, because that's really the key. Is really, we have to sort of step it back, go simpler, go more primitive, forms, primitive shapes, and seeing things. And that's my goal, is to teach you to sort of see things a little bit less overwhelming, see it from its more simpler shapes, and so it becomes more approachable, and it's not so so that way you are empowered to draw and create anything. Whatever it is, whether it's hands or an entire canvas of hands, like it doesn't matter, like face your fears. Like I want you guys to have that sense of confidence of believing that there's no limits, that sort of it's like, sorry, I don't draw noses, I just what I mean, I can't, it's just too hard. It's like the moment we create that limitation and that barrier, we're not allowing ourselves for the potential of incredible things to happen. We're shutting that door on the possibility of really amazing things coming out, and we're not even letting ourselves have that chance. And so I think if we can be brave and face the things. And so if you guys find, if next week we're going to be facing and dealing with hands, if want to practice beforehand, please sit down, and like, I know, right? You're like, I haven't learned yet. Well, even then, just to practice, and even if your own feet, we talked about feet, like practicing anything that I've taught you guys. Just if you could sit down in front of a mirror and do some sketches of yourself, that would be awesome. Like that in itself, like you're your own model. You can kind of change the foot, you can move your leg around, really study. Use your own self as a guide in that way. And then next week, again, we will go into hands and arms and all things that means, and sort of the shapes of that, and kind of wrap up the series. I'm hoping next week, let's see, maybe August or potentially September, we'll have another series if I can wrangle a model and get that going. But until then, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.